and we really appreciate you joining the Applying Universal Design for Learning to Enhance the Student Experience. I am Heidi Gershio. I am joined by my colleague Karina, who works with me in the LSU Online and Continuing Education Program. Karina, if you'd like to introduce yourself, you may.
Yes, hi, thank you, Heidi. As Heidi says, I am Karina Sanderson-Thorla, and I do work here with LSU Online in the Continuing Ed Department, specifically with our Design and Development team. And Heidi and I actually kind of joined around the same time. And we started out, our adventure is a little bit different. We started out with recruitment and retention. So, once those students got in there, we were there to help keep them there. And I think that has helped us in our job, kind of being on the other side, hearing the students and what is working in those courses and not working in those courses, and which is really important. And I hope that we kind of drive that home to you today, is trying to make that experience for your students as pleasurable as possible. So, as I mentioned, we are part of the LSU Online Design and Development Team, or D&D, and we do work closely with faculty to create those high-quality learning experiences for those students. And we do that by incorporating instructional design, user experience, and also other design principles. So we also facilitate faculty professional development offerings, such as this workshop right here, and to provide support and guidance to faculty who are designing, redesigning, and teaching courses for a blended or an online format. So myself and Heidi, we are going to be monitoring the chat throughout our presentations. So obviously, as I'm presenting, Heidi's going to be monitoring, and vice versa. So please, if you have any questions, make sure that you put them into the chat. And we are going to take some periodic breaks to ask questions and have people speak and stuff like that. But if you're a little on the shy side, don't worry about that. Just post your questions in the chat, and we will make sure that we answer your questions today. If for whatever reason we run out of time, we will make sure that we do address your questions in a follow-up email. So to enhance your course design, it is really important to carefully consider your choice of materials, your techniques, and your assessment methods. In today's workshop, we are going to explore these strategies for creating a course that caters to a wide range of learners using what we call the Universal Design for Learning principles. UDL, for short, empowers students to engage meaningfully with their course content and apply their learning to various contexts, regardless of their backgrounds or their learning styles. So by the end of today's workshop, you're going to be able to explain the 3 principles of UDL and how those principles can be applied to course design. And also you'll be able to apply the UDL guidelines in creating a learning experience. So while the course in this workshop does focus on online courses, please remember, it doesn't matter your environment. You can use these techniques within a blended, online, or even in face-to-face. So here's a look at what we have in store for you today. During today's workshop, you can expect to be engaged in what we're doing right now, a presentation, what we're going to be doing soon, some discussion. And we actually have kind of a group activity for all of us to participate in. These estimates are meant to help you get the most out of your workshop experience and know what to be prepared for. We hope that you will take the opportunities that are provided to engage in the discussion and practice so that you can achieve the workshop outcomes to their highest degree. So at this time, Heidi is going to launch a poll, and we're going to ask 2 different questions. So the first question is, what do you think helps students feel that an online class is fair and supportive? And you will have 4 multiple choice options for that question. And the second question is, how familiar are you with the Universal Design for Learning framework that was developed by CAST in 2018. So you should see the poll there on your screen, and just take a few moments to definitely go and put in your responses there.
I see.
That's some good answers there, Heidi.
Yeah, I see that a lot of you agree that it takes all of the above to help students feel that they're having a fair and supported course experience, online experience. And some of you are somewhat familiar with the Universal Design for Learning principles. It looks like some of you are not familiar at all, and we're really excited to help you guys get to know a little bit more about this framework and some of the principles that we're going to cover today.
Yes, good. So as Heidi said, it is truly our goal at the end of this workshop to make sure that you walk away with the tools that you're going to need to implement the universal design for learning so that you can improve and, more importantly, optimize that teaching and learning outcomes for your courses. So let's take a moment to reflect on our roles as educators. So as I read this quote out loud, I would like for you to think about the following questions. And when I get done, there's going to be an opportunity for you to share your thoughts on this. So the first question is, what does this quote mean to you? And the second question is going to be, how does the quote pertain to the student learning experience? So educators hold incredible power. Power to design learning experiences, power to set expectations for students, power to elevate and celebrate student voices, power to inspire and motivate students, the power to create consequences, and the power to allow for choice and personalization. We have to understand that all of us carry that power and privilege, and we must use it as a tool to confront and dismantle inequities so all students have equal opportunities to learn. So once again, let me go over those questions and just give you probably about 30 seconds here to process. So what does the quote mean to you? And how does the quote pertain to the student learning experience? And once again, if you want to just put your messages in the chat, you can, or if you want to unmute yourself, please feel free and let us know. The note takers. Oh my goodness. All right.
I know for me, it kind of can be a little overwhelming as an educator to realize the amount of power that you may hold in a course. And so sometimes it's just absorbing all of that in this moment. So we really appreciate you guys taking the time to do that.
And Sarah, you're so very true. And that is part of this course, is trying to provide the access to the information. We have great ideas of how we want to present material. And it is true that in face-to-face, you can do a little bit more sometimes than you can with an online environment. In case in point, I was working on a surveying course where when they were on campus, they actually went outside, they took the equipment, they set everything up, and they did surveying. So coming up with some type of plan or some type of strategy so that they can get that same experience online. I will say it was very difficult, and I really wanted to rely on modern technology. But two things: one, it's not there yet. And two, if it had been there yet, would those students, all of them, been able to access it? So definitely keeping those things in mind is true. Yes, during COVID, um, yeah, most definitely. It really does, Sarah. It does reiterate your responsibility as educator. It is. I think it's one-sided. Okay, students hold. Well, they do. You're right. It does go both ways, Emily. I agree with that. You know, we can give them all, what's that proverb? You can lead the horse to the water, but can you teach him to drink or something? I can't even remember how it goes, but you know, something like that. Frida, you want to say something?
I was going to say, when my best student last semester looked at me and I was asking her what she was going to do for her final project, she said, "Oh, whatever." And it was the way she shrugged her shoulders, and I'm going, "You want to explain that a little bit more?" "Well, I just kind of want to do what I want to do when I want to do it because that's what I got used to, and I like that."
Okay.
And at that moment in time, I knew I was going to be rebuilding my course from scratch, and I did. Totally. And so far, it has worked.
Well,
I've
good.
also, uh, anyway, that's right now. I just try and
No,
see if I
thank you.
can
Definitely.
improve
Thank
and
you
work.
for sharing. That's true. And that's also another aspect of the designing the course. I mean, typically your students in online are going to be a little bit older. Whereas, you know, sometimes those face-to-face students are a little bit younger. So trying to find that balance of appropriate types of materials to use and also to that mindset. Your online students, as I said, are a little bit older. They've been there, done that, as the saying goes. And they truly are there because they want to get that education. They want to get in, get out, get done, and be able to, you know, proceed with their lives. So it can be a hard balance sometimes, but I'm glad, Frida, that you are doing well with it. So thank you, everybody. Some really good responses that we've had from you guys. So what is UDL? We've talked a lot about it, said the name, we've used the acronym a little bit. So I want to get us started by defining what Universal Design for Learning, or ODL, is. CAST, which is a nonprofit organization responsible for developing UDL, and the guidelines that has defined UDL as a framework, they say that it is to improve and to optimize teaching and learning for all people. In other words, UDL is a way to think about teaching and learning that gives all students an equal opportunity to succeed and offers flexibility in the student learning experience. So Heidi, can you go ahead and post in there? Heidi's going to put in our chat a link to a really nice, colorful infographic for you that is going to show you some of the principles and guidelines that we're getting ready to go over. So that way you can have it on hand if you want to pull it up while we're going through these next few slides. I'm trying to figure out how to move. Yes, Frida, that most definitely. And that is a hard balance sometimes. It is. Like I said, with that construction course I was doing, how do you do a course that was pretty much all hands-on with surveying, with equipment, go into doing it online? So we kind of had to switch a little bit. We had to pivot. We didn't focus so much on running the equipment because it's a construction management program. Most people in that situation, they might not be being a surveyor, but the important thing from that course that they really needed to learn to meet all the standards is that information, the data that was provided from doing the surveying. So we could just kind of switched it a little bit. I went and I found videos showing how to set up equipment just so the students would know. But we focused the shift and the focus of that course. And they've even done this on the campus as well. Because the other side of the story is, unfortunately, the instructor is no longer, he retired, so he's not there in that department, and he was the only one who knew how to how to really do the equipment. So we've switched the entire focus of the course. And like I said, since that main outcome was so that the students know what to do with the data, how do they manipulate the numbers, or how do they, set up all these calculations and what to do with it. So that might be something to think about, in the online course or your face-to-face course. They need to learn the same things, but how can you focus that shift just a little bit for it? So we do have the opening of the graphic, or sorry, I can't even talk. So if you are opening up the little infographic that Heidi gave out, you'll see that the framework is divided into several sections. So we're going to take a closer look at each of the UDL principles so that we have a better understanding of the framework. So in this workshop, we are going to discover how the UDL prompts us to ask more questions about our students. Excuse me. So universal design for learning helps to address key questions. The first question is, who is in the room? I kind of briefly touched on this just a little while ago. Now, UDL considers the diverse range of students present in a classroom or a learning environment when designing and implementing instructional strategies. Its emphasis is the importance of recognizing and addressing the individual's needs and strengths of all students, including those with disabilities, cultural differences, language barriers, and varying learning styles. Our second question that UDL addresses is, who is trying to get in the room but can't? This kind of goes back to Sarah's comment earlier about how, some people, they might not have access to everything. They don't have access to certain instructional materials or course content. So what are those barriers? So UDL acknowledges that students may face barriers to accessing education or fully participating in learning experiences due to various factors concerning the level of abilities, language differences, cultural backgrounds, social economic status, or other forms of diversity. Also, too, somebody had mentioned earlier in the chat, COVID. When COVID hit, everybody truly had to change. And we really had to look at how we are presenting our materials in the courses and truly make accommodations, not only for ourselves as instructors who maybe had never taught online, swore up and down they would never teach online. Now they love it, but also to the students. Not everybody has access to a computer. Most students are going to have a tablet or they're going to have a cell phone. So how are they going to be able to take, this quiz and be proctored? So looking at different ways of adapting in the situations that your students are in. So the third question is, has everyone's ideas been heard, respected, and importantly, understood? So UDL promotes an environment where all learners feel valued and supported in expressing their thoughts and perspectives. This means creating those opportunities for diverse learners to actively participate in discussions, share their ideas, bring their authentic selves to the course, and contribute to the learning community. So transitioning from understanding the key questions, now let's take a look at the pivotal role that UDL plays in shaping inclusive and accessible learning environments. So it's important that we highlight the role that UDL plays in providing an inclusive and accessible educational experience for all students. By providing those equal opportunities and fostering diverse perspectives, UDL helps ensure that education is for all students. It goes beyond the simple acknowledgement of actively addressing diverse learning needs through a range of course materials, teaching methods, and activities. This not only recognizes individual differences, but it also creates an environment where students feel recognized and engaged in their learning journey. So in addition, UDL's significance extends to its powerful role in eliminating unintentional barriers through promoting accessibility, transparency, empathy, flexibility, and accountability. I think somebody had mentioned that earlier in the chat, that, it's great that we as instructors have done everything, but, those students, they kind of have to reciprocate as well. So UDL contributes to creating an educational environment that is truly beneficial for every student. So later in the workshop, we're going to provide you with some specific strategies of how to apply UDL in your courses. But now let's explore that framework that supports the role of UDL. So the UDL framework is made up of 3 main principles for improving teaching and learning, and they are engagement, representation, and action and expression. Each principle is then broken down into guidelines, and then the guidelines have corresponding checkpoints that provide more detailed suggestions. So I'm going to start by briefly reviewing each of these principles as we move forward in today's workshop, and then we will get more in-depth with suggestions for applying these specific checkpoints to transform your course. So engagement, students, just like our own children, every student is different, every child is different, and these students, and they vary in the ways that they are engaged, and more importantly, that they are motivated. So the affective part of our brain regulates our emotions and influences motivation, interest, and persistence in learning. So this is the why principle. Why do I have to do this? As a parent, we tell our children, because I told you so. Unfortunately, when we're teaching students in our classrooms, we can't say just because I said so. We have to provide the why is this important for these students to learn these concepts, or to learn the knowledge, to understand whatever it is that we are trying to teach them. And I have found that if my parents gave me a reason as to why they didn't want me doing something, or why I should do something, I understood it better. I could understand why they were possibly saying no, or why they were saying yes. So it is important that the students understand that purpose of their learning, or find that they're learning to be of a particular interest or relevant in their life experiences. They're more likely to be engaged and persistent in their learning. Our next one is engagement. I'm sorry, I said the wrong word. Representation. Oh my goodness, I apologize. Students are going to vary in how they perceive or they comprehend information that is presented to them. So the recognition network of our brain that assists us in filtering and understanding information that is presented to us. This part of the brain is going to impact how we interpret that information, and that can be caused by variances in life experiences, as well as how our brain functions. And this does include the levels of ability and disability. So this principle is more of the what. What are we learning? What of the learning, because it is focused on that information and the content that the student is expected to engage with and comprehend. So they've asked, why do I have to learn it? You've told them, now you've provided them what they're going to learn. And now lastly, our last one, actions and expressions. And this is how are they going to understand. So action and expression is where students vary in how they navigate the learning environment, and also too, how they express what they know. So this part of the brain is more a little of the strategic part. It's where we plan, it's where we execute, and we monitor our actions. It also involves in how we react to information that we receive, as well as the environment around us. So like I said, it's how. How are you going to be able to express that you understand, or how are you going to be able to express that possibly that you don't understand, so that you as the instructor can redirect the student and help guide them so that they can understand. This part, focuses on providing the support for how our students will plan, and also too, how are they going to be able to express that knowledge? So thinking about their progress and planning of how they can demonstrate this to you. I am going to pause right now. I know I have given your brain, speaking of the brain, tons and tons of information. I know the chat has been going crazy. I've kind of seen it going up and down there on the side. Heidi, is there anything that we need to address right now, or does
well, I know
have any
that Mike mentioned that he was glad we talked about proctoring, and
Mhm.
Mike, we do have a couple of strategies that we're going to cover to provide a little bit of context for that in the representation section, and as well as the engagement and action and expression section. So you will probably find some of those things really helpful in terms of directions and instructions. And then I noticed that Frida also commented on language and cross-cultural differences. So I think that that's something that you'll enjoy hearing about later in this workshop as well. So we're excited to share some cool information and get a little nerdy with you on some of these checkpoints and how the brain works. So yeah, thanks for engaging, guys.
Oh, good. All right. So to speed things up a little bit, now that we've covered all the basics of UDL, we want to look at specific checkpoints that are built into the UDL guidelines and provide you with some examples of how these checkpoints can provide a more equitable learning experience for your learners. So educators can use these guidelines and checkpoints to help create a learning environment that meets the needs, like I said, of all students. The principles and strategies introduced today can also assist you in evaluating existing course outcomes. I know Frida was talking about, completely redoing a course over from scratch. The materials, the methods, and more importantly, the assessments. So unfortunately, we don't have enough time to go through all the checkpoints for each guideline because there are 9 guidelines and 31 checkpoints. That's a lot. We're going to highlight on about 3 to 4 checkpoints for those 3 that we had mentioned earlier. You should know that by striving to achieve any of these checkpoints, you are working towards meeting the needs of your students. We will share a variety of resources throughout this presentation, and you also will receive an email after the workshop. So we'll have all the links in there as well. So if we do post something into the chat and you don't get a chance to get to it, don't worry. We'll definitely be in the follow-up email. So that first principle that I talked about was engagement. And the engagement principle, once again, you need to provide a variety of ways to become involved with that course content, the peers, and their instructor. These are the students. The checkpoints we will discuss in this part of the workshop are going to focus on optimizing the relevance. In other words, why am I doing this? The value, what am I going to get out of it? The authenticity, fostering the collaborations, with the community, with each other, the students, yourself, you and the students, and minimizing those threats and distractions. So students are going to differ in their responses to motivation. So what motivates me is not going to motivate Heidi, though I don't know, we're pretty close, it might. But keeping that in point that every student has something inside them that is going to motivate them to do what needs to be done. Also, same thing with engagement. And you need to enter your course with this in mind and know that your students are coming from different backgrounds. So by providing options and opportunities that are not only interesting and appropriate level for the student, you can create an environment where the students exhibit those high levels of motivation and find that they're learning to be more purposeful. So the first checkpoint that we are going to look at is 7.2. So checkpoint 7.2 helps spark excitement and curiosity for learning by optimizing, once again, that relevance, that value, the authenticity. So a key method of engaging students' interest is to demonstrate the relevance. In other words, why do I have to do this? Why is this important? and also the benefit of learning by showing that relevance through authentic and meaningful activities. The assumption that all students will find what you're talking about interesting might not be 100%, so that they need to know why you are presenting this information. They need to know how useful and how valuable it is going to be for them. The best way to engage in the students equally is to provide opportunities that are going to maximize those three things: the relevance, the value, and the meaning to them. From the start of your course, you're going to want to speak to how the course has relevance, how it has that value, that authenticity for the various students who may take it. In other words, those students who is in their major or those who are not in the major. And if the students that are in the major, they are probably going to be more motivated. Your students who are just taking the course because they have to take the course for the credit, well, how are you going to motivate them to that same level that the majors are? So some ideas that you can incorporate into your course include polling your students and providing those icebreakers, which can help with getting to know your students. Include diversified content and assessments that are culturally responsive, relevant, and socially relevant. Include scenarios, images, and assignments that are appropriate for different racial, cultural, ethnic, and gender groups. So various names, settings, or cultural references when providing images, scenarios, or problems will help you find, I'm sorry, I completely said that wrong. I apologize. So using various names, settings, or cultural references when providing images and scenarios or problems. Define diverse images that you can use through open source image sites. If you're interested in some of these, we will definitely have them in that email so that we will follow up with you. Go on the websites and do some searching and see what's out there. I was really surprised at how many websites that there are out there that do deal with the different cultures, the different nationalities, you name it. It
Even
truly is
different
definitely out there.
industries.
Huh? What'd you say, Heidi?
Even different industries. Some,
Correct. Yeah,
women
and
in tech or
Mhm.
engineering, different industries even have some
Mhm.
really interesting free
They
and
do.
or licensed imaging.
Yeah, I'm working on a respiratory therapy course right now, and they were so excited that they were able to find such the different variety of pictures,
Yeah.
showing the different techniques and stuff. So yeah, it's definitely out there. So other ideas that can be used to meet this checkpoint would include various activities to engage your students or integrate the students' experience, their identities and backgrounds and their cultures. And you can invite the students to share their experiences, but you don't want to ask a student to represent a group. Just ask what their experiences are as just a regular person. How would this happen? Or how did that happen? Or how did you feel in this situation? Or how did you feel in that situation? Design your course activities using a variety of social, professional, or cultural contexts that go beyond the online classroom. And also, too, this kind of goes back to Sarah's statement about the accessibility of getting those materials. Consider a no-cost or even a low-cost alternative to your required text to aid in economically disadvantaged students. So there's nothing worse than buying a book that costs more than the course. So it can get kind of frustrating from the student's perspective. So as an instructor, every way that you can help them out, accessing that content, being more knowledgeable or being more cognizant of all the different cultures and environments that we have out there. So in an online environment, it can be isolating, and students do have a hard time interacting with their instructors and with their peers. So the more that you can foster that collaboration and community, the better it's going to be. So checkpoint 8.3 helps to foster and collaboration and the community. So to foster this, you should offer assistance to your students and use welcoming language. A good idea is, as an introductory activity, include something like this, some type of a graphic or some type of video or like a podcast or something like that that uses all different types of languages, visual effects like this, so that when you are creating that welcome email, you are truly touching everybody that you can. Personalized introductory activities are a great way to allow your students to open up and to have a little fun. Heidi and I were talking about this yesterday when we both started. One of the questions that was asked every time somebody new came in was, what is your favorite cereal? And we were talking to another coworker, and she was like, because I do want a little bit further. What was your favorite cereal as a child, and do you still like it today? I was like, oh, I didn't think about that. So it's just interesting to think of just something simple as, what is somebody's favorite cereal? Or I had asked students one day, what was their favorite ice cream? And somebody said vanilla. And I was like, vanilla? Oh, like kind of plain. And she's like, no, think of all the different things you can do to vanilla. I can put sparkles. I can do chocolate. I could do caramel. I could do butterscotch. I was like, oh, okay. So, and when I thought about it and looked back at the student, I'm like, well, that explains a lot about her personality. She was very vibrant. She was always wanting to accessorize all of her outfits and stuff like that. So yeah, just some simple little questions can truly give you some insight to your students. So trying to come up with some type of a personalized and introductory activity is definitely a great way for your students to open up and have a little bit of fun. So you can do this with activities such as asking their students, like I said, favorite animal, favorite color, place to travel, those type of things. And this also can possibly, open up to you learning more about their backgrounds, also to education, where do they live, those type of things. So in the chat, we are going to provide a link to, it's called the One He website, that does help provide creating very interesting ways to introduce your students to the course. And also, I want to hear from you guys just really quick. What do you do when you're trying to meet and greet your new students? What type of activities have you done as far as icebreakers?
We love to hear about, we love to hear about new ways to introduce yourself. Per se.
Yeah.
Feel free to add to the chat as well. One of the One He examples is actually like sharing how many countries you've been to and things like that. So they have some really neat ways to introduce yourself in there.
Yeah. Oh, good. So definitely go take a look at that. You look at it right now. If you want to look at it later, please do. And this link will also be provided in the email that we send to you. And another idea that can be used to connect your students with the community around them is to introduce assignments and projects where students work with community groups to not only foster collaboration and a sense of community, but also to increase the authenticity of those learning experiences. Now I want to talk about minimizing threats and distractions. So for students to become open to collaborating, you must ensure that your course minimizes those threats and distractions, and it creates a safe place for their learning. The environment must be accessible and non-threatening when interacting with you, the instructor, and also with their peers. It is easier for students to concentrate on learning when they are focused on meeting their basic needs, and also that they are avoiding some type of negative experience. In an ideal learning environment, everyone can work in a safe place without distractions and threats. So to do this, instructors should set up some ground rules for inclusive language and respect dialogue for their course, which includes discussion forums and group projects. So creating a learning pact, including course etiquette policy, and also to reviewing the content that you have for bias or perspectives is definitely suggested. Consider including a written narrative or media in which you speak personally about the expectations and beliefs regarding the course. Use this time to set a positive, encouraging tone regarding what is expected of students, and also to how they can obtain support. As an instructor, you want to truly ensure that you and your course does provide an accepting and supportive climate. So let's take pause to see if anyone has any questions related to the principles and the checkpoints. Heidi, we got anything going on in the chat?
Let's see. I have a thanks for the link and a couple other comments about live proctoring behaviors and things like that. So maybe setting out some of those appropriate behaviors in the syllabus could be a better approach to letting the student know those expectations up front and really being transparent about it and know how difficult that can be. No other comments that I can see.
Okay.
Let me make sure I didn't miss anything.
Okay.
Yep. Okay.
All right, great. So next, I'm going to talk about strategies for representation principle of the UDL. So each of your students perceives and comprehends information differently. We've discussed that. We've talked about it. So the students that come in your course will have varying abilities and prior knowledge, and they may have some preferences about how they receive their information. So providing as many options for representation is essential, since there is no one representation that is appropriate for all students. The representation principle involves providing students with content in a variety of formats or guiding them to that content. By providing key information in different areas or different ways, you can help your students build important disciplinary knowledge and develop ways of thinking about course content. The way that this principle is applied in practice is by providing information in formats that can be perceived as a diverse set of students, ensuring that they have the same understanding of language and symbols, and representing information in ways that encourage comprehension. The checkpoints we will discuss in this part of the workshop focus more on offering alternatives for auditory and visual information, and also promoting understanding across languages. These checkpoints are going to help ensure the student success for students with sensory disabilities, learning disabilities, language or culture differences, and so forth. It is important to know that learning and the transfer of learning occurs when multiple representations are used, because they allow those students to make the connections within as well as between these concepts. So this next slide that I'm going to show is going to help you to build a learning environment that supports that student learning by offering different types of alternatives. So checkpoints 1.2 and 1.3 offer alternatives for auditory and visual information. These ideas will help ensure a success for all students, especially those with auditory or visual impairment. To help a student success, you can provide resources like videos, animations, and simulations that students can control in sound and in speed. Record your lectures for students to review later using Panopto. This could be a narrated presentation with an optional video if you're speaking like, possibly in the corner of the screen. Upload PDF transcripts of any videos in Moodle or link them to the video content. Add captions to narrate PowerPoints, video messages, video tutorials, and other video or audio information that you create. So be sure to review any of the automatically generated transcripts so that you can correct any errors. You'd be surprised what does come out of the wonderful AI technology that we have. We have to remember that not all of us speak in the same way, and sometimes it does hear things a little bit different. So please make sure before you post your videos or the transcripts that you have read through and that you have made any corrections to that. Provide personalized tutorials, so verbal instructions with a visual support for how to do something. Like, for example, if you're going to use some type of a technology tool, or if you're going to use certain features in Excel. So record yourself as you're going through the different steps. Record yourself as you're demonstrating what to do with a specific tool or product. Going through that process and talking through each one of those steps is a great way to do this. Provide descriptions for all of your images, your videos, and animations. Sorry. So let's move on to discuss promoting understanding across languages. But really quick, this image here, it does show, it's a great representation of something visual. So let's say a student has read about, this is dealing with a number of people who have used drugs between 2006 and 2015. I can read all of this information, and to me, the numbers sound high or they might sound low. But to truly understand and to get a visual concept of what is going on, to me, this is better representation. I can see how much was used in 2006 versus 2015 of the marijuana, the cocaine, and all these other drugs. So just because you read it and the students see the numbers, sometimes visually giving them some type of picture is a better way for them to truly understand that concept. Checkpoint 2.4 focuses on promoting the understanding across languages. So as an instructor, you should be careful about using slang or idioms that may confuse non-native speakers or students with those disabilities who struggle with nuances, idioms, and humor such as sarcasm. So in order to promote student success, link key vocabulary words to definitions and pronunciations in both dominant and heritage languages. Consider pre-teaching important vocabulary terms in ways that connect to prior knowledge, like a little mini lecture or H5P activity, or a linked activity. Offer a glossary of key terms at the beginning of the course or within the module, it's called a Moodle glossary, to define the domain-specific vocabulary. So what I want to do right now is to take just a quick little break, and I want to ask you guys in the chat, have they ever used this method linking to a glossary? If you haven't, done this before, we're definitely going to encourage you to do this for your content and to see if there is an opportunity for you to add a glossary that helps define domain-specific vocabulary. Yes, it is a good idea, Emily and Frida. It truly is. I had not thought about that. And there's a course with one of our other designers that when I first started, and I can't remember, it might be environmental science or something like that. And she had created within the course a glossary so the students could go to that glossary on one page, but also two, each one of those words that appeared in the glossary was hyperlinked. So the student can click on it and it took them to that glossary. So it was done in two different ways. And I was like, God, I really like this. Yeah, we got some good comments, don't we, Heidi?
Yeah, I'm trying to keep up. Yeah, this section is just for you, Frida. For that promoting the understanding across languages. Some of these strategies, as simple as like the pre-vocabulary or creating vocabulary lists and specifying the industry can really make a big difference. It's a small thing, and we know sometimes it could be cumbersome to build out that glossary, but once it's there, the work is done. So it's realistically.
One thing I can offer is that when I first, well, not first, but when I encountered a few semesters ago, a student who was extremely brilliant. She had been recruited by the athletic department for a sport. I won't get into particulars. And they wanted her to succeed, but English was her fourth language. And literally, they had plucked her from Europe, brought her over to America, and she was trying to go to college with her basic, she was very fluent in Italian and Spanish because she had grandparents in both countries. She was very good in French, And so she was trying to pick the words that were common to all three to learn English. Now, my son has been a linguist with the Air Force for many, many years. And I finally just gave up and called and I said, how do I deal with this? Because I know she doesn't understand what's going on. So he said, you're going to have to get her into your office, talk to her, see what words she does understand. And he gave me the weirdest, I thought it was weird, tip, and I had more success with it than anything. What he said to do is, as I was trying to find a word that I could have in common with her, and then I brought up something about a label, and she didn't understand what label meant, as Label.
Mhm.
And I looked at the post-it note on my desk, and I wrote down, "You are a great," whatever the athlete was, and I pulled it off and I put it on her shoulder, and I said, "This is your label. You are a great athlete." And all of a sudden, it just kind of the lights went off. So we started labeling things, and that's
Oh,
how we
that's
got.
fantastic.
And I have my son to thank for that. But then
That's a
I
That's another
yeah,
one of those audio visual
yeah,
pieces, so
yeah,
even a picture, and I know they do this in language learning for obvious reasons, but a picture of salt with the words in both languages and things like that can be very helpful
yeah,
for
yeah.
a
Well,
student who
well,
are
and
having
I
some cross.
finally was able to ask her, when I give you a test in class, how do you take the test? And by this time it was like 6 weeks into the semester, and we were getting words together that we could use, and she was picking them up fast. I mean, she was brilliant. My God. And she said that she looks at the sentence first, the question, and she finds all the words that she knows and tries to get a sense of meaning from each of those. If it's only three words out of a
Context.
sentence of 10, she says she can usually pick the answer if it's multiple choice. And she was picking pretty well. And she tended to learn by just, okay, inferring the answer rather than knowing the answer. And then that kind of moved us along. I think the problem that we had is that none of the way we teach journalism allows for that kind of interaction because there's no
Right,
time. When you have
right.
60 to 80 students, you don't. But, when the assistant dean, AD for athletics is standing at your door going, oh, we really need you to work with this. And I'm going, okay. I love her. She's sweet and we'll figure it out. But thanks to my son for giving me all those tips on how to learn languages. So, yeah. But the post-it note thing was the biggest success. And we started having post-it notes everywhere. So it worked. So,
Yeah.
let me turn off this one.
Oh, good. So by providing clear links between the relationships among different languages allows students to think flexibly and strategically about how they might use their strengths in one language to promote understanding in another. So perfect segue for you. Perfect for you. You should avoid jargon, or if you use jargon, provide hyperlinks or in-text clarification of those terms. For example, read one current article related to UDL and the role it plays in student learning. So in this situation, what we can do is hyperlink the UDL so that students can go click on it just in case they don't remember, or they truly do not remember, or they've never heard of what UDL is. So it takes them to an outside source so they can get that information.
We're fortunate enough to have a lot of, I think, in this AI time, having a lot more access to technologies that can help with translation issues, but it still doesn't necessarily bring them back to the word that they need to know for examination. So it is a delicate balance to find that. I know we're transitioning into questions next, I think.
Yes, we are. So we're going to take a
So,
pause. I think we've we might have paused a little bit too soon, but we can't take another pause because now we're going to switch gears a little bit. And Heidi's going to start talking about those action and expression principles and strategies. So while we do this, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and she's going to start sharing hers. So if there's anything else that you guys would like to talk about in the meantime, while we are doing this, please, let's go ahead. So yes, for using those glossaries, doing the Moodle book, that is great to do. Sarah, I had responded to you talking about it in discussion forums or even in class. Like I never really spoke up because by the time the teacher recognized me, everybody else had said everything, that I wanted to say. And I was like, well, I'm not going to say anything. Well, I literally had an A in the class. And when she went to show me my final grade, she gave me a B. I was like so mad. I was like, why am I getting a B? I got A's on all my papers. She's like, yeah. She's like, what part of the grade is participation? And you were very quiet in class. And so I was like, oh, no more am I going to be quiet. So, trying to learn how to just talk in class sometimes is difficult.
You learn that really, really fast. that
You do.
have
You
to
learn
speak
how to
up,
think of
or
another way to say something really real quick.
It's never fun for the introvert though.
No, it is not.
So,
And that I definitely was. So
we understand the barrier. All right.
I'm going to throw out one more thing we did when
Sure.
It wasn't during the midst of COVID, it was after COVID when we had to, for some reason, I think it was one of the weeks that I was out with a health issue, but I could teach from home. So I taught the whole class from home. And what we had done accidentally during COVID that I now implement all the time when I have the whole class on Zoom and if they're at their homes. What happened during COVID is that my cat walked across the desk and put her nose on the camera and started licking it and doing, what cats do, and then sat back and kind of did her paw thing. And the students loved it. And all of a sudden, one girl picked up her dog and put it on her lap. Well, we ended up out of the 18 students, everybody introducing a pet. Only one student did not have a pet near them. And we had birds and snakes and all sorts of things that sat on their heads. And the girl who didn't have her dog here pulled out a giant picture of her dog. So we had about 15 to 20 minutes of total interaction that completely broke the ice for the rest of the semester because everybody was sharing something that they weren't going to get a grade on. They totally loved it, and we laughed. We really needed the laugh, I think, because it was really very soon after COVID, and it just was like, okay, so it's in my syllabus now. If we're on Zoom and we're at home, we will introduce our pets as well. So, I wanted to bring that one up before I had to.
It's funny you say that because I think everybody knows all my pets. I used to have Dotson. His name was Cooper, and Cooper would always want to get involved. And I had another dog, Gypsy. Sometimes she'd be getting, involved in it. But I have a standard poodle now. He's very tall, and so actually earlier while I was presenting, you probably wondered what I was doing. Buddy, his name is Buddy. He was standing right here, and he wanted to be petted. So I'm petting and trying to, present as we go along. So just trying to adapt to the new environment, and that's part of it as well. So I like that you encourage that.
That's so much fun. Yeah, sharing what a good icebreaker. Like even if it is mid-course, that's a great way to humanize the full experience. We're all in this together. It reminds everyone that we're all in this together.
I don't know about the snake though.
And it was one of those yellow pythons, and it was really big. And I think we all went, oh,
the vet person is probably like, ooh, what kind? our vet participant, and he's just like,
The same kind of snake that escaped from that zoo at the old Mall of Louisiana, well, the Mall of Louisiana thing, the one that got lost in the rafters. Same kind of snake.
I didn't even hear about that.
It's not as big as the one that got loose. So,
Wow.
That's so funny. Well, that does lead us into action and expression to some extent, but more on a strategic level, we'll talk a little bit about how students express themselves. So we obviously, even just from your example, Frida, know that students express themselves in various ways, and often how we interact to the physical or virtual environments is different. So students, we, choose in this course, students don't necessarily always have the same psychomotor abilities, or they may have preferences about how they share information with others. Like you said, maybe they didn't want to put their dog in the camera, but they put a picture of their dog in the background, things like that. So to apply this principle, instructors can provide options for students to demonstrate learning both physically and mentally. For example, providing access to accessible tools, or allowing or providing options for communicating, sharing the background or sharing an image rather than the real object, or even doing other things to aid in students' development can really help with their executive functioning skills as well. So following the guidelines can help create an environment where students are more strategic and goal-oriented. These checkpoints that we're talking about talk about multiple media and also planning and strategy. So those are the main things that these checkpoints will cover in terms of action and expression. This principle in particular is important to think about and consider, because it creates a fair and supportive environment, and it helps you as an instructor, and it helps the student. Some of the particular checkpoints are critical for creating that fair and supportive environment, because they do help to reduce or eliminate barriers for students so that equitable learning opportunities are available to them. A lot of students have a variety of visible or invisible disabilities or challenges to overcome. So it also can help to promote flexibility to meet those needs or the preferences of a wide range of students. So we'll look at a couple of examples in a moment on how we can apply these two checkpoints in a course. So the first is checkpoint 5.1. It's about allowing students to express themselves in the medium that they prefer. So some means of communication may be difficult for students. For example, some students may find it more difficult to express themselves verbally, but they excel at expressing themselves in written form. Some people really love a discussion, like we were talking about how everyone speaks up, and then maybe the people who don't speak up are left out. Well, providing a forum where students can speak, metaphorically speaking, virtually, allows them to engage in that same activity mentally, while not creating a barrier of having to speak out in the class. Email is another example. Email is a traditional asynchronous method, but maybe we could offer students a way to contact via phone, or even using a chat system. Messaging, I know, is sometimes troublesome, but maybe Teams or other things that are available to the student could be accessed instead of requiring a traditional method like email. Sharing with their students during office hours could be as simple as offering the option to turn the camera off and only use the audio. So those are just some ways to adapt to help with communication. Unless a specific technology or medium is critical to the learning goal that you have for your student, consider allowing the student to choose how they might complete an assignment. So one example is maybe you have the learning objective for a particular module might be for students to summarize and interpret primary research. Well, the natural inclination is to have the student complete this research as a research paper. We would say, well, how else would they present that? But students could also create an infographic, some kind of visual component, maybe do a video presentation or a slide presentation like we're doing here, and we're having an interactive conversation still. But this provides the same opportunity to convey the same information, and it allows you to assess the same learning objective while giving the student a little bit more choice and autonomy. The advantages of using a broader range of media also, including the word processing, audio, video, film, multimedia images, even animation. If your students get really, really excited about that kind of thing, maybe you can spark a new component, a new draw of a level of engagement from a student who may have different interests. And you're building fluency into their vocabulary of schooling, and it offers a wider range of options and prepares students better for real world experiences, career experiences, and what they're taking out of the course is all transferable. It offers them different ways for communication and often needed skills for the career that they're walking into. So providing these valuable alternatives for the students who have, even persistent difficulties with writing expression could really allow that student to demonstrate their knowledge without forcing a written piece. So some things, some ways you might be able to execute this would be even like a choice board. So this is just an example of a way that you can have students address specific learning outcomes, or objectives. They would need to address at least one or three maybe of these topics here, but in this way, you're giving the student autonomy. They can choose which topic or which topics they want to discuss and write about, and then move forward with that assignment. So in addition to considering the types of assessments that are included in your course, you might consider creating assessments that require students to solve realistic problems, or that are personalized to their interest or major. So you could include as part of your prompts in different discussions or assignments that they integrate those interests, those career goals, skills that they know they might need, and how they're acquiring them. So for more information on creating authentic assessments, we do have a short Learn and Go video, and we also have a Design Your Course Rethinking Assessments workshop that you could check out on our website, and then that's also going to be shared in the email. So don't feel like you're have to scramble to write down a long link. That's not needed. Karina can also share that Design Your Course Rethinking Assessments workshop link as well in the chat. So I'm going to move to our next checkpoint, which is checkpoint 6.2. This focuses on helping students executive function skills by promoting planning and thinking ahead. I know as an instructor, you may find this strategy particularly helpful because it can distribute your grading load and serve as a check-in. It provides a formative middle point assessment, which allows you to adjust your instruction or even materials. If it's an online only course, you can adjust those things as needed based on the student's skill demonstration. So in order to promote student success, rather than maybe having one large project near the end of your course, you could consider scaffolding. Maybe they would share, in this example, you're seeing on the screen, you could have them scaffold first their intention, then their next step, and they're building in these milestones breaks down that larger assessment and helps them really tackle each thing. It's way less overwhelming when you have just a small component to complete, and students often have a higher quality product because the students aren't waiting until the end of the term to begin this big project that's due. They're actually seeing module 1, module 2, module 3 has a little breakdown of things I need to do, and it gets them closer and closer to that big goal. So the next example is a little bit of a checklist. This is another option that you can use that helps with that planning and strategy development. So some students may not find checkpoints helpful or even a checklist helpful, but they may find that the details help them to meet the expectation that you guys have for that final assessment. Now, it could be a little overwhelming to see a long task list of everything that's needed, but breaking them down into components that are needed, you can see presentation component here, and then the details on that particular component could help with it to not be so overwhelming. It gives them small tasks that they can complete and feel a sense of development, a sense of planning. They know how to tackle the problem. And again, that goes back to the why, the what, and now we're talking about the how. So this really gives them a tool, a way to scaffold the work that they're doing. And then lastly, I know that sometimes we may or may not want to hear about the comments that students have about maybe a group project, because we know how troublesome those could be, or maybe we want to save the student another additional stress. But making time in your course for reflection on the content can actually provide different opportunities for reflection for the student. So it's really nice to bring in a middle point checkpoint. Maybe this in this case, this example is for module 2. You ask them how they're feeling about it. What do they already know about that particular topic that they may be choosing to do? What do they expect? And maybe some of the things that they would expect to do, so that they're scaffolding the work that they would be doing mentally before they actually even hit the big milestone, maybe the midterm or the outline of a piece of work. So it breaks this down into a more of a reflective piece, so that they're able to go through that reflective process and scaffold on their own. So without further ado, this is where we really bring in all of the different pieces, the guidelines, the checkpoints, and the strategies to discuss how we could use these to work in our course. So at this point, we want to take the knowledge that you've acquired so far in our presentation and solve for a problem that you faced in your own courses. I know some of you have already shared in the chat a lot of different ideas and some challenges too, proctoring and language barrier, and or just languages across different topics, and then industry lingo. So I think this is a great time for us to practice what we're preaching and start applying a little bit of the UDL principles to solve for the problem that you may have faced. I'd like for each of you to reflect on one of your courses that you teach and choose maybe one concept or one assignment in that course that typically generates a lot of questions or confusion among your students. Maybe not so much of the process of navigation, but the assignment itself. And we're going to set aside a 10-minute timer to give you some time to process this. Now, I am going to acknowledge that it is 2:17, And so that will leave us only 3 minutes to discuss and or hi, highlight everyone's experiences. And so I want to tell anybody who has to drop off at 2:30 that we are so sorry that we're running over a teensy bit on time in terms of that. We alternately could take a little bit less time to come up with our assignment and then share in the chat as you guys come up with different barriers and solutions. So
Why don't we say 5 minutes?
how does everyone feel about 5 minutes? Maybe like throw out a reaction icon or something, a boo or a yay. And we can give you guys a couple of minutes to do a quick reflection for yourself. All right, I see Sarah saying no problem. Sarah Saban, but not Sarah Sims.
Yes, we can do that. I know, Frida, you had said that you are going to leave it. I mean, a
Thank
lot of
you.
other people definitely leave. So yeah, we could do that. I mean, we could skip the sharing right now if you wanted to. And the email that will be sent out, you would have our email as well. But what I can do right now is put mine in here. So you can do that.
Yeah, and if you guys have follow-up questions after you receive our follow, I totally hear you, Sarah Sims.
It is. It's definitely a lot.
We understand. We do. We still go back to the UDL principles pages and go, okay, checkpoint which? So and really like, how do we apply this truly? So it's any little piece can make all the difference. So you'd be surprised.
Yeah, so if you guys just want to email it to me or to Heidi, definitely, that is no problem, because we do understand is we this is probably one of the largest groups we had in quite a while. So we're excited that so many people are actively participating. And sometimes I think that is a little more
valuable,
not entertaining. I'm not saying that we're not entertaining, but I mean, I think people get more out of it, you know, listening to their peers and what other people are doing, actually doing versus us telling you what to do sometimes. So thank you guys so much for the participation. So yeah, if you guys just want to email it to us, then you go right on ahead. And Heidi, why don't you just go ahead and get going with wrap up here.
I'll go ahead and close out because I don't want you to feel put upon with the time constraint, but do feel free to share in the chat if you have any barriers or anything, and some of the solutions that you've come up with, how you could maybe apply the UDL principles. We love to share these examples with other faculty members, and it can be really helpful for them to just hear that other faculty are in the same boat with them. So if you do have a thought, and as I go through these next couple of slides, please share in the chat. We would love to hear a little bit about that and be able to share that in a future workshop, or even just in our future conversations. We really appreciate any input that you guys have. So let's summarize big takeaways here. As we close out this workshop, I kind of want to take a moment to just summarize and emphasize some of these big takeaways that we discussed. Incorporating the UDL framework, as we know now a little bit more about that framework, we can see how it can benefit all students in your course. All students benefit from viewing multiple perspectives and different representations in your content, and expressing themselves in a variety of ways also increases a sense of belonging in the course and in the community that they're in for that course. And engaging in the course with limited barriers is another one of those practices that the UDL framework definitely helps students benefit from. Remember that these are, there's no average brain, so there's no average student, really. Rather, we want our design practices to apply to all the users to the greatest extent possible. So when we design our courses or our activities, assignments, except either individually or as a whole, with this attitude in mind, we automatically lower the barriers, some that we may not even know were there. Sometimes we have such vast knowledge in our subject matter, we forget how little, you know, as Scrubs would call it, the newbie knows. So for students, it can really, UDL can really increase opportunities for learning for all learners.
Yeah, I think as instructors, we forget we were in their seats at one point in time.
I know,
Have that
I
same blank
remember it.
face.
I feel like I'm always learning. And I learn from every faculty that I talk to. It's
Oh,
always
yeah, definitely.
really cool. And then finally, that the principles of UDL, including engagement, representation, and action and expression, those larger principles address the why, the what, and the how of learning. By accomplishing each of these brain networks repeatedly, and by accessing those, you create a more meaningful and challenging learning environment for your students. The UDL checkpoints are there to assist you in incorporating each brain network into as many places in the course as possible. So maybe it's just your larger assessment this term, or maybe you say we want to tackle all of the course. I know somebody mentioned I had to readdress the entire course, and we get it. We love it when we tackle those things head on, and we know how challenging it can be. So one thing that you can do is to continue to reflect on your desire to provide that welcoming and learning environment for all students, and modify things as you need to. So we really want to hear from you. In 1 or 2 words, this is the last interactive piece. In 1 or 2 words for anybody who's still with me, type in the chat your biggest takeaway from today's workshop. We'll give you guys about 30 seconds because we actually have time now to do that. That's awesome. Creating a sense of belonging. It's so true, Teresa.
Mhm.
Dressing barriers, very
Yeah.
nice. Inviting, right. It's surprising what a little bit of vulnerability can do for a student.
Oh my gosh, I love Amanda's quote.
Yeah,
Assignments don't need to be identical to be equal.
agreed.
I love that. Very
Take into
true.
consider prior knowledge, very nice. So
Mhm.
true, so true. And
Yeah.
even like sometimes the opposite, what they might not know and what they need to know.
Mhm.
For sure,
Very true.
access in innovative ways. Very nice, Elise. Thank you
Yes.
guys so much for your input. We really appreciate that. I know it can be a little nerve-wracking to have to interact at the very end. So we really appreciate you guys doing that. Now, some of you may be asking, okay, I get it. UDL, important, lots of principles, lots of checkpoints, plenty of different strategies have been addressed, but what's one way that I can just hit the ground running and make some small changes, or even just make some changes? And sometimes I just like to think about ways that I can make changes in the way I think about things. And so some of the questions that you might consider as you do that could be these questions here. Some of you might just want to know how to apply this on a smaller scale, and these questions can help address that. So why will students care about my topic or my assignment? One day this is one way that you can actually address this. One day that why has to be answered. You can't just say because I said so. And so one way to do that is using instructional language. The purpose of this activity is, and I know it sounds redundant when you use it over and over again, but it actually works with the contiguity, one of the contiguity principles of visual and multimedia design too. So in the chat, we are going to post a link to a one-sheeter that does provide a little additional information on instructional language. And in this, and then in what way, the next question is, in what way can I share the information and ideas on in this topic or in the assignment? And you can do this visually, textually. Some people even do video instructions for specific topics or assignments, particularly if they're complex. This can be really helpful. A 2-minute breakdown could save you hours of back and forth emails for students. And then in what way can students develop and demonstrate learning through the topic or assignments? So one way to begin to address this is maybe through varying the types of assignments. So rather than always having a forum, maybe we have a forum and then a reflection. Every other module can vary so that the student gets a little bit of variety while also engaging in that scaffolding that we talked about to develop those executive skills and planning. All righty. So final thing, if you're ready to just tackle this whole UDL principles thing, one way that you could start is to review the syllabus and all your activities. So you could select the syllabus for a course that you teach and then review it. Then the next step would be to select one teaching method, transparency in learning and teaching method, and implement that in your course. And then share the idea with a coworker. That's bounce some ideas off of them. Share with them what you've learned a little in this workshop, or even just in general about UDL and the transparency in learning and teaching method, and gather some different ideas. Sometimes we can spark a whole new idea just by having an open dialogue. And then the next is innovate. Develop a plan to integrate the UDL principles throughout your course. We will be sharing the links to each of these in the follow-up email, so we know that that you guys are at time, and this is our last slide. If you have questions, we will absolutely stay on for the next 5 minutes to answer any lingering questions, concerns, any wonderful comments. We love to hear those too. And we really thank you guys all for joining us today. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, we're glad to hear that, Sarah. It sometimes doesn't feel approachable, right?
That's all right.
We get that. We do.
For sure, for sure. And I want to thank Sam and Teresa for joining. They're in the flow class, the facilitating learning online class that I'm helping teach right now. So thank you guys for coming.
Yeah,
Really appreciate
thanks,
that.
guys. We love to see cross sections of our population coming to different places and just gaining more resources to put in their tool belt,
That's true.
so to speak.
Very
Awesome. We really appreciate you guys. If you had any questions, feel free to unmute your mic, pop them into the chat. Like I said, we'll stay here for another 4 minutes. I see you're still here, Teresa. Did you have a
got any
question?
questions?
More inclusive. Yeah, I saw your comment earlier, so it's so true about the inclusive, creating a sense of belonging.
Yes, Teresa, as always, you are welcome. You too, Teresa.
And if you'd like, you can turn the recording off.